This is not peace. It's a loaded gun aimed at Europe's future, a line drawn on a map that claims to end a war while quietly ensuring the next one. Ukraine is told to stand exposed, disarmed, and waiting, while Moscow is handed time, money, and room to breathe. And buried inside the so-called deal is something even darker. The moment when empires don't compromise, they decay.
And so the Ukrainians are trying not to reject it out of hand because they don't want to piss off the United States, specifically Donald Trump. But there's very little reason to expect for them to like this. That doesn't mean it's better for the Russians. The Russians are expected to treat this as the end of all wars and all military action in the European sphere. They are to now say that this is a settled issue and that all existing deals, all security developments in the post-Cold War environment are fine, and they are to codify that under Russian law. They furthermore have to accept that European forces can and will be stationed on rump Ukrainian territory, something that they've always been diametrically opposed to. In essence, if this deal goes through, the Russians are codifying that they're done. They're codifying that they have no chance of ever getting back to the Carpathians or the Baltic Sea or the Caucasus or any of the rest, and they basically just die slowly instead of dying quickly in a war. Completely a non-starter. But my favorite part of this document is what the United States would do with the frozen Russian assets, which are about $300 billion. Some of them would go to help rebuild Ukraine, but a big chunk, over $100 billion of them, would go into a fund that the United States gets to direct however it wants. Basically, Donald Trump is hardwired into the agreement, the Russians paying the Americans a bribe of $100 billion. Let me tell you what I really like about this plan. It actually goes through and puts its finger on all of the issues of contention, which is something that the Trump administration has largely ignored to this point. So the idea that this is a document that was made by the Russians is incorrect, because there's plenty of things in here to make them furious as well.
What this proposal really exposes is that it traps everyone. Ukraine is left exposed, flat, vulnerable, and defenseless. Not a country secure for survival, but a future battlefield placed on pause. Russia, meanwhile, would be forced to legally acknowledge that its expansionist ambitions are over, locking itself into managed decline rather than victory. And then there's the money. Sees Russian assets redirected under U.S. control, turning geopolitics into leverage so blunt it borders on humiliation. This isn't a peace plan. It's a slow-motion reckoning that neither side can truly accept. What you just heard explains why frozen lines and artificial peace deals never end wars. They don't resolve conflict. They delay explosions. And now, as if on cue, the consequences are no longer theoretical. They're not confined to maps, documents, or diplomatic language. They're unfolding inside Russia itself. While Ukraine endures missile strikes, drone attacks, and rolling blackouts, yet still manages to reconnect, to restore communication, to stay linked to the world, Russia's second-largest city has gone dark. Not because of bombs, but because of fear. What's happening in St. Petersburg is not a technical issue. It's a warning signal. Start with a contrast. Because it matters. Ukraine is under constant attack. Missiles, drones, explosions, power outages lasting hours or days. And yet, even under those conditions, mobile internet returns. There are interruptions, yes, but communication survives. Information flows. Truth moves. Now look at Russia. As this is being recorded, St. Petersburg, Russia's second-largest city, Vladimir Putin's hometown, the symbolic pride of the empire, has been without mobile internet for at least a week. Authorities say it will remain offline until the end of the holiday season. No clear timeline. No certainty. Just silence. Ask one simple question. Why? This isn't weather. It isn't a technical failure. It's a deliberate decision. First, control. The Kremlin is trying to hide reality from its own population. But more than that, it's testing something dangerous. How much deprivation apolitical Russians will tolerate without resisting. How long daily life can remain broken before frustration turns into anger. How much fear can replace comfort before silence cracks. Second, the shutdown is being used as a crude shield for strategic infrastructure around St. Petersburg. Sites like the Luga port, a critical oil export hub, have already been hit by Ukrainian drones more than once. When a regime can't fully protect its assets with air defenses, it pulls the next lever, cutting connectivity. That's why the air defense excuse doesn't hold. Yes, Some drones can theoretically use mobile networks, but that isn't how modern warfare primarily works. Technology evolves faster than bureaucracy. Blanket shutdowns don't signal strength, they expose weakness. Specifically, serious gaps in Russia's air defense systems. We've seen the signs. Putin's flagship naval parade in St. Petersburg, a symbol of power, tradition, and imperial pride, was canceled this year. That alone would have been unthinkable not long ago. Now, not long after, the city has lost its mobile internet entirely. These aren't isolated events. They're connected. Historically, the Kremlin truly worries about public sentiment in only two places, Moscow and St. Petersburg. These are the cities that matter, where elites live, where oligarchs reside, where protests actually frighten the regime. And now those same cities are dealing with canceled flights, air raid alerts, and communication blackouts. That isn't stability. It's crisis management. And the impact is immediate. Mobile internet today isn't a luxury. It's infrastructure. Without it, payments fail. Shopping becomes difficult. Food delivery stalls. Taxis are unreliable. School systems can't be checked. Taxes can't be processed properly. Daily life slows into constant friction. Multiply that by millions of people day after day and becomes unbearable, no matter how officials spin it. What's especially telling is that similar shutdowns have long been imposed on Russia's peripheral regions. Buryatia, Belgorod, Rostov, the Far East. Areas near the front lines or used as military corridors. Those regions were treated as expendable. St. Petersburg was not. It was always protected, politically, economically, symbolically. Treating it like a frontline zone sends a chilling message. Nowhere is safe anymore. Naturally, people are starting to ask questions. Why is this acceptable now? Why is daily life being sacrificed? Why is silence being forced? And when populations begin asking questions, regimes begin to panic. Officially, authorities insist this is about defense. Unofficially, it's something far more unsettling, a social experiment. The state is testing how much freedom it can remove, how many digital doors it can close, without triggering unrest. Website bans are expanding. Platforms are disappearing. There's now open discussion inside Russia about blocking major video platforms entirely next year. Picture society sealed off from global information flows, trapped inside a carefully curated narrative. It doesn't arrive slowly. It snaps into place all at once. And here's the bitter irony. While Russia censors, isolates, and silences its own people, Ukraine, under bombardment, continues to communicate, continues to expose reality, continues to stay connected to the world. Even as missiles fall, truth is not hidden from one another. That contrast should haunt Moscow, because the blackout in St. Petersburg is not strength. It's fear. Fear of drones. Fear of information. Fear of public mood. Fear of the moment when people realize the cost of this war has finally reached their doorstep. And the military dimension makes this even darker. Just last night, Crimea saw highly effective strikes. Russian radar systems were destroyed. Key detection components wiped out. Even MiG-31 aircraft were hit, assets meant to project power and intimidation. In a single night, losses reached into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Inexpensive drones array systems were $250 million. This is why the internet blackout matters. When air defenses fail, when radars vanish, when aircraft burn aground, regimes turn inward. They close doors. They silence signals. They try to slow reality itself. But reality doesn't slow down. And that is the deeper truth behind the darkness in St. Petersburg. This isn't about holidays, safety, or technical measures. It's about a system under pressure from every direction, military, economic, psychological, struggling to hold itself together. Because the only peace that ever lasts is the kind that removes the ability to wage war again. And what we're witnessing now is the early stage of state realizing it can no longer protect its myths, its cities, or its future the way it once promised. The darkness in St. Petersburg isn't temporary.